Hello YouTube, let us resume the second half of the episode in space business. In today's episode, we are doing a unique feature where we are going over everything you need to know about global space business. So let's take it from the top and start at obviously Artemis program. The first step in returning a human to the moon, there was one Japanese businessman whose name is Kosaku Maezawa-san. He and the rocket launched in space last year. Technically, he was the first Japanese passenger who went to space. Jeff Bezos was there, Richard Branson was there, a lot of space billionaires went to space. They have received a lot of criticism for spending on their wealth on business that are given basically joyriding to other billionaires. Others say they are laying the groundwork for an industry that will someday be accessible in space more easily. For me, of course, my expectation is to get the price down. That is, the vacation destination. I actually want to live there and work in space, or I want to be there as a customer base. But going into space is just the tip of the iceberg for the new space economy, because they haven't done Artemis program yet. I think it is gonna be accessible for normal passengers to fly to space once Artemis program is completed. So, space tourism sector is not a major sector for contributing to the space economy yet. As I mentioned earlier, that comes alive in 20 or 30 years later. As of now, telecommunication sector and a new constellation that companies like SpaceX, China, India that are working. Thousands of satellites orbiting the Earth, transmitting TV signals, international calls, GPS locations, weather forecast, and military information and stuff like that. They are all utilized from space sector. I don't think people realize that they actually depend on space for so many of their platforms today. E-commerce is supported by space, even navigation is supported by space, so that is where space economy is all about. But unless Artemis program is successfully achieved, we can't move to the next step. Well, it's such a big project and it's already ongoing. It takes a long time to complete. In the meantime, the private companies like SpaceX do the similar project in parallel. Elon Musk has launched around 2,000 satellites into a LEO under the project called Starlink. He eventually aimed to have liftoffs with 42K in space. Now, the Earth is surrounded by 3 orbits. Okay, the closest orbit with LEO, as I mentioned, Earth's surface is a low Earth orbit. The next is a medium Earth orbit, or MEO, and the fastest from the Earth's surface is geosynchronous, or also it's called GEO. So among with these 3 orbits, LEO is the hot spot, so to speak. It works faster. The downside is that it covers only a smaller area, so you end up needing a lot more of them. Chinese government all has a plan for LEO constellation with hundreds of satellites and a space station called Tiangong. And now a space war between the US and China is on fire. Sarcastically, it enables us to provide a cheap satellite internet connection to even the most remote areas like MEO. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first artificial satellite called Sputnik. Ever since then, space technology has dramatically developed, and now it's getting incredibly competitive in global space industry. Why? What the hell is happening? Why the hell is LEO becoming very critical for the placement for satellites? Actually, first come, first serve. If China has the ability to launch a satellite and the US doesn't, China gets the particular orbit slot. That also put the US in a disadvantage, of course. According to the Outer Space Treaty, space is the common province of mankind. If you have been to a moon first, you have already claimed for the territory. In terms of space economy, the question of who can profit off of space will become even more difficult as the economy grows more advanced. The moon might possibly have abundant resource to mine, like titanium, helium, that is critical for nuclear fusion if we get the technology. So a lot of space billionaires are expected to make more money. In case a company SpaceX mines that, obviously they're gonna have to find a way of sharing it with other countries, because the space is a common province of mankind, as I said earlier. That's my perspective, but the people get greedy. Even though the Outer Space Treaty prevents you from mining tons of resources on the moon, you might wanna find another way to take everything in your pocket. Because they made a milestone on their own, So how come you think you have to share? Hell no. It's gonna be a real tough to find a common ground on the moon between administrations and private companies and space agency, for example. But whatever you say, it has to be tried, So the things can be discussed when the things happens. Whichever goes, Artemis program has to be done at any cost. In some ways, the question of what is in space and how to manage it could be a part of case scenarios, whether it is possible to find a common ground on the moon. But going to the moon first is I think it's kind of a big assignment of all of mankind. Good or bad? As long as a global space economy is booming and expected to be worth at least $1 trillion US by 2040. We have to try. Absolutely, it's not all about sending billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos to space, but it's all about overall future economy going on. Myself, I'm pretty much excited about what the space economy is going to be like. It could be a good example of how to work together, government, private companies, to make sure that we share this common good. So, as for what do we have to do in the long run, sending mankind to space aside, we're gonna have to be able to do some secondary business, like reusing the stuff, disposing in space once, and become a junk. Once space companies launch a rocket or satellite, they remove its fuel tank in a latitude of 100 kilometers around the atmosphere and burns up, but it remains as space debris, which is a piece of space junk. And if the space junk attacked a space station or satellite by coincidence, it could be a crucial damage for crews. Then they have to collect debris in space. So those kind of activity can be the next stage of potential business, for example. So if you put up hundreds of millions of dollars on those things, it's of interest of everybody to make sure we keep that safe. I guess that's where maybe government are interested too, and help work to get the debris risk down that they have. So the issue of space debris were raised from humans polluting and abusing common resources in this case. So in the environment of space, it is a technical problem that we have created, at least driven by our own choices. Of course, debris is not only a problem satellites are causing. I never say I'm right, but we have to figure out the solution in business. So, the earlier I called this a second space race between China and the United States, but it is important to consider the differences as compared to the first one with the Soviet Union. The second one is a lot focused on which country actually invested in the commercialization of space, the economic development of space, and the return of profit from the particular space business are gonna be the very, very core body of discussion. So it is quite a different kind of space race that we see today and in the post-Cold War. In today's episode, let's talk more about internet revolution that went worldwide for the past decades. Okay, so originally the internet was developed by the United States for the sake of military purpose. The government privatized the internet network into private companies, and I think that's how the world economy grew up. So internet was a national STEM industry controlled and regulated by the public companies, and once security is ensured, it was transferred to a private company respectively. So for the next stage, the same thing is just about to happen to space industry. One of innovators who changed the world were, as you guys know, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. We talk about, for example, the company that is developing private rockets. They need a launch site. So what the US has done is that he has offered a vast round of the launch site for the very subsidized rate, and that helps in terms of a private sector being able to meet some of the demands that come from their own government to launch. However, Japan was not an easy country to go through with too much security policy and regulations because the governors were fucking full. Let's say once you are onboarding for developing rocket technology, you invested in the tremendous amount of fund at millions of dollars, for example, and created a rocket design, and you are ready to press the button to fly it to space. But you didn't get an approval from the government to launch. For sure, you're gonna be fucking pissed off. You can wait for approval for years, but in the meantime, other countries, other competitive countries start developing advanced space technology, and it's obvious that Japan is behind the space race. I think the space race is basically driven by a desire for scientific prestige. If you think you are having a late start and you see a long distance with your competitors, you lose your way. I mean, you lose your desire, lose your passion. Yeah, you know, you are confident and capable of launching a rocket by all means, but the stupid government is in a way of doing what you really want to do in space business. You are so frustrated. I think there's a tendency to still see it in space business sector from two perspectives. One is that it's still unclear to understand how critical space related enterprise is to interact with internal economic development and external capability. The second is national security architecture. Internet is one good example. We need to define how internet is connected to a space industry more specifically, and we need to identify how we can generate profit from space. We can't make a living from space business unless we have stable income, right? Yeah, because we have a life. We don't know how yet. That's why Japan is so behind. Now that the US, China, and Russia are leading countries to develop a spacecraft, space station, and satellites, Japan cannot even be on the same platform with them. You can probably recognize the biggest name in space by just using their last name, Son. Yes, that's right. SoftBank is the only Japanese company to have launched 7,000 satellites into space. No other domestic competitors are left. You might want to keep an eye on up on the camera, Mabu Nakagawa. Shut up. Well, in order to join space race to Mars, at least you have to get familiar with the know-how of internet in the first round. So when you are okay with that, you can just start thinking about something else, such as transportation and tourism sector in space. I saw an interesting journal saying about the point-to-point transit suggested by Elon Musk. That sounds a super amazing idea, but it's still unrealistic for me. That's why Elon Musk is called the stupid genius. But anyway, it will enable you to move from Japan to New York within 20 minutes. That means you go up to the space and down to the ground, just like an intercontinental ballistic missile. Right? Yeah, I talked about in the first half of this episode series, so definitely it makes sense to me. So SpaceX and other space companies are rushing to commercialize those technology in transit sector. The way we live Earth has changed remarkably. all the engines of a rocket run so fast. You have a lift off for 30 minutes and reach your destination. Yeah, space seems to you like a vast black desert, but now we are ready to make the desert blue. Opening a space up to business to private enterprise is coming up soon for sure. Well, we are not satisfied with the current technology. Yeah, absolutely not. We keep making progress to improve the quality of life on Earth, right? So if you were a young person in 1970s, you saw a people who touched down on the moon, and 50 years later, we still haven't gone back. I think it's sad or even disappointing. The achievement is still on pending, and I think we should get this going to today's marketplace. I think Elon Musk is having a fantastic success, but not Japan at least. Well, there's only one thing we should be proud of geologically. You know what that means? Hokkaido is a perfect space port to make Japan an Asian hub for the space travel business. As you can see, Japanese geography, yeah, Japan is located off the coast of eastern end of the Eurasian continent and surrounding by ocean. We have a great advantage of a spaceport, and we believe it's gonna be a potential to become an Asian gateway to space. I just took one example from the internet resource because I want you to know the space industry in Japan becomes a great niche in business and has been slowly but surely growing up for several decades. Okay, so space cargo and transportation services have significant increase in the demand for transport of goods from Earth to space, from space to Earth, as I said earlier. They will surely be one of the most valuable and necessity space business ideas. Moreover, in the future, there will be entire law firms specializing in space law, because the most important economic political process will take place in space in the future at the same time. I'm not sure if I can be still alive by the time it happens, but I look forward to it. That's all for this episode of Space Business today. If you liked this video, you can find more like it here. Okay, so thank you for watching and see you next time soon. Have a good weekend, buddy.